go. There you go. Work, work, work. Let's go. Eyes up. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome to Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. Eric Allen and Ethan Greenberg in our home studios. We'll hear from Olivia Landis and Brian Baldinger later in the show. As you can see, a very snowy day in Florham Park. The team is actually practicing inside at the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center. EA, it is officially, in my book, December, even though it's December 9th, because the snow's coming down. It means that it's prime time football season.
It is football season. Wow, that is a lovely sight in Florham Park, isn't it? The white stuff falling down. We're only a couple weeks away from Christmas. The Jets are going to see some precipitation, I bet, this weekend on the other coast as they travel out to Seattle. Rain is in the forecast in Seattle. No surprise there, Greens.
Definitely not. The Jets are making their first of 2 back-to-back West Coast trips, take on the Seattle Seahawks, and then they play the Rams next week. That game will be Sunday at 4:05, so back-to-back 4:05 games for the green and white. But today's headline on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM, is that the Jets have a new defensive coordinator in Frank Bush, and I believe that is Frank Bush, who is not facing us in the ball cap. And Frank Bush is going to be calling plays for the remainder of the season here, EA.
Yeah, he certainly is. Adam Gase relieved Greg Williams of his duties on Monday, making the switch. Bush has been with Gase for a number of years now, and Frank Bush also has coordinator experience back with the Houston Texans if we go back to 2009 and 2010. He's one of the most respected guys on this staff. And you think about his position before he took over this interim role, Greens, assistant head coach, inside linebackers, and 2 guys who are playing really well for the Jets. Former undrafted free agents in Neville Hewitt and Harvey Longy. I think Frank Bush is going to be a steadying presence for this team, for this unit down the stretch.
I think so as well. And when you look at Frank Bush, you saw the little bio blast there. He was the defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans in 2009 to 2010, and he helped that franchise set franchise low in points allowed per game and yards allowed per game. So the Jets, I don't know about you, EA. I'm really curious to see what this Jets defense will look like because we're late in the year here. So how many changes will there be, if any, schematically and personnel-wise? That's really what I'm going to look for against the Seahawks. Is there anything that stands out to you that maybe could shake up a little bit?
Well, I'd like to say something really quickly. Is Greg Williams did a lot of good things for the Jets over the last 2 seasons. I mean, that team, that unit finished 7th overall in the National Football League last year. Unfortunately, it just didn't work out. But yeah, you talk about schematic changes and maybe personnel changes. I don't know how much you can do in short order because you don't have a lot of time, but he might take a different approach. Again, this is a challenging week, Greens, because you're game planning for a Seattle Seahawks offense that features Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Chris Carson at the running back position, and the list goes on. One of the most explosive units in the National Football League. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he calls that game because the Jets, you would think, probably play a lot of cover 2 this week against 2 guys who can beat you deep and one of the best long ball throwers in the National Football League.
That would be, of course, Russell Wilson, who's second in the NFL with 32 touchdown passes. For a closer look at this Seahawks offense that features guys that EA just mentioned, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and, of course, Russell Wilson. Let's hear from Brian Baldinger for another Baldy's Breakdown presented by Sharp.
Thanks, Ethan. This week I want to take a look at the Seattle offense led by Russell Wilson, who started every single game since he's been there, and his 2 main targets, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. When the Jets get ready to play Seattle this week, just know that at the bottom, DK Metcalf can run by any corner in the league. He can hit a home run from anywhere on the field. He can dominate a game from any time, during any time of any game. He's got that type of ability. Now, the other receiver in the slot is Ty Lockett. He's small, but he can beat man coverage, and Russell Wilson sometimes If he gets in a groove with them, he'll go to Lockett every single throw. Know that. A lot of teams try to play Russell Wilson a lot of different ways. Maybe just rush 3, make him hold the ball. And he's willing to hold it. Now right here, everybody's covered. But usually the guy that gets open is Tyler Lockett, the longer he holds it. That's who he's looking for. Lockett is his go-to guy when he has to hold it. Now they want to run the football with Carlos Hyde and Chris Carson. But Russell Wilson is probably at his most dangerous when he starts getting out of the pocket and he has to create beyond the X's and O's. Like right here. He gets flushed from the pocket, but his eyes are always up. And his first read is usually Tyler Lockett. That's who he's going to bail himself out, to play beyond the X's and O's. He's a great receiver. Tyler Lockett can take over a game just as well as DK Metcalf.
Great stuff from Baldy, as always. DK Metcalf leads the NFL with over 1,000 yards receiving, 1,119, 9 touchdown catches, 17.8 yards per catch. And one way to keep that offense in check, well, keep them off the field. And the Jets did a great job in the run last week. And for more on that, let's bring in Olivia Landis.
Hey guys, thanks so much. Happy to join you on this snowy day. I don't know, I'm pretty excited because I love the snow. But anyways, back to the run game. For the first time this season, actually, the Jets rushed for 206 yards in last week's heartbreaking loss to the Raiders, as we all know. But it was actually the first time that they've rushed for that many yards on the ground since 2018. Now, Frank Gore, the 37-year-old vet who has pretty much led this running back group for the majority of the season, left last week's matchup early after suffering a concussion, which honestly resulted in Ty Johnson and Josh Adams having a complete takeover in the game, leading the team with 22 combined carries. And Johnson especially had himself a day. The third-year running back recorded a career-high 104 rushing yards on 22 carries and 1 rushing touchdown. His performance was so impressive that the run game helped elevate the team to a 28-24 lead in the fourth quarter before unfortunately falling to the Raiders in the final 10 seconds of the game. Head coach Adam Gase spoke to the media following the contest, and he said that the running back group was aggressive and attacked the defense. He said that's why they found so much success. He also said that the group followed the offensive line and did well with their blocks. The Jets are currently ranked 19th in the league in rushing yards per game, averaging 106.6 rushing yards per game, and are now ranked 15th in the league in rushing yards per play, averaging 4.37 rushing yards per play. I was able to speak to Ty Johnson following the contest, and I asked him why he was able to find so much success in last week's game versus the Raiders. And he said it was honestly all about the offensive line. They did a wonderful job for him. He said they hit their blocks, and he said he just trusted the process. So hopefully they can translate that into this week's contest versus the Seahawks.
Awesome. Liv, thank you very much. We'll check in with you later in the show. Ty Johnson, you're right, was absolutely phenomenal against the Las Vegas Raiders. Scored his first touchdown as a member of the Green and White, a speed back, really. And you saw his quickness on Sunday. And earlier when you were watching practice in this show, you saw Frank Gore. We'll have the official injury report later today. We'll have the unofficial injury report later in the show, basically who Adam Gase said will and will not practice. But Frank Gore will practice in a limited capacity, as you saw. And the one thing that we should keep in mind here is while the Jets did a great job on the ground against the Las Vegas Raiders, that's the strength of the Seahawks defense, whereas the Seahawks pass defense is 32nd in the NFL. So the Jets might have some opportunity here to make some ground, no pun intended, in the air.
The anticipation, Greens, is that Frank Gore is going to be available Sunday in Seattle. So you would have the stable of 3 backs. LaMichael Pirine, the rookie out of Florida, still dealing with that high ankle sprain. But Ty Johnson was very good. Josh Adams was very good. People forget that Adams led the Philadelphia Eagles in rushing a couple years ago. The Jets amassed more than 200 yards on the ground, and a lot of the success that they had on the ground, no surprise, they're rushing to the left, right behind left tackle Mekhi Becton. And they had success running the football, whether Sam Darnold was under center or lining up in the shotgun formation. In fact, Greens, Two of their two rush touchdowns came out of the shotgun formation, but most of their runs came when Darnold was lining up under center. You mentioned the matchups. Well, styles make fights, and Seattle has been very good against the run so far this season, but they are last in the NFL against the pass. The Jets. In this receiving group, we're going to have to monitor what's happening with them right now, because there was some news today where Adam Gase said rookie Denzel Mims, who's been so impressive so far, is dealing with a personal issue, and his status is in doubt for Sunday due to COVID protocols, the testing protocols. So the Jets have to juggle their lineup on the outside at practice today. And what is it going to look like Sunday out there in Seattle?
I just want to clarify something here, because when you say COVID protocols, people might be thinking, well, oh my God, does that mean that Denzel Mims contracted the virus? That's not the case. So Denzel Mims is dealing with a personal issue, which means, let's say he leaves Florham Park, hypothetically, he would then be out of the testing protocol if he missed one day. And to enter back in the protocol, you need to have a series of negative tests. So we'll see. We'll monitor his status throughout the week. But with that being said, let's take a look at the full injury report presented by Atlantic Health. Obviously, Denzel Mims, one of the guys that will not practice today. Jordan Jenkins as well with a shoulder injury. And the three guys there, and Greg Van Roten, Ashton Davis, and Bennett Jackson, Adam Gase said that there's still an opportunity, or a chance, should I say, that they will all be placed on injured reserve and miss the remainder of the season. And then the Jets kind of have a thicker, limited report here, because Pat Elflein was somebody that was limited last week a little bit, but now he's got the ankle injury in addition to the shoulder. And one name to keep an eye on also is Marcus May, because he's going to be a very important piece to that defense if, in fact, he cannot go Sunday. But I didn't really get that message from Adam Gase. I think a lot of these guys that are limited are rather precautionary.
No, I agree with that. I get two guys that I just want to add into the mix here that aren't on the injury report, or two players who were just designated to return to practice. That is Bless Austin and Trayvon Wesco. Now, Bless Austin, he could ultimately return to the starting lineup this weekend against Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And then Wesco is a guy who played a lot of fullback for the Jets. We saw Ryan Griffin lining up in the backfield quite a bit last week. The Jets did a lot of 12 personnel looks, but Wesco gives you some more options offensively if indeed he does come back on Sunday. I think Bless Austin would be big for the Jets this week.
I totally agree with that, especially given what Baldy told us, what we talked about in that Seattle offense. And for the receivers, real quick, if it's not Denzel Mims, I think you would assume Jeff Smith would be the next man up, but that leaves a spot open on the back end, whether that's someone that gets signed to the active roster, like perhaps Lawrence Cager, who we saw was elevated to 2 games earlier this year, maybe Jaleel Scott. The Jets also have DJ Montgomery on the practice squad. I'm very interested to see who that next guy will be, because these last 4 weeks, this is the time where maybe you want to see some more of your younger guys on the field to see what they can do for 2021.
Oh, I think there's going to be a ton of roster moves coming up for the Jets over the next couple of weeks. Joe Douglas, in fact, don't be surprised if he's looking at other teams' practice squads and trying to bring in guys here late in the year, so you have them part of your program as you start 2021. Obviously, we've got a couple weeks to go here in 2020, but that's a great point. A lot of roster moves. And you mentioned the receivers. Okay, so if Mims does not play on Sunday, you would imagine your base would include Jamison Crowder and Brashad Perryman. But the Jets, traditionally, their base is 11 personnel. That's 1 running back and 1 tight end. Well, in that look, you would imagine Crowder goes back inside. Of course, he's your slot wide receiver. And who's the outside guy? And like you mentioned, that could be Jeff Smith. He's got about 16 receptions so far this season. Remember, Vincent Smith on this roster as well.
And for that guy right there, number 14, Sam Darnold, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but the Seahawks have the worst passing defense in the NFL. And that's being objective when you look at the statistics. They are 32nd in the NFL. That's not an opinion on my end. And we'll see what happens, because it's going to be interesting. I think the Jets will want to establish a run game like they did last week, especially to keep Russell Wilson off the field. But given the way that pass defense of the Seahawks has played, you would expect or anticipate Sam Darnold to have opportunities to push the ball down the field.
Oh, you certainly will, with or without Mims. You'd love to have Mims in the lineup. The guy's had 40 yards receiving in each contest he's lined up in. And you talked about where he is in yards per catch earlier. I mean, Mims and Perryman have given this outlook a new look as far as getting the ball down the field. Perryman banged up early in the season. He was only had one catch last week, but the Jets got it done on the ground. What you want to see from the offense is that complementary football where the run game and the pass game is going as well. Sam Darnold last week accounted for 3 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, and also he ran for 1. Unfortunately, he had the 3 turnovers, 2 strip sacks. A lot of times, strip sacks, you can't do too much with them because maybe you don't know if a guy is right there, and they're good guys. I mean, good defenders in the National Football League are going to be trying to get that ball out. I'm sure he'd like to have that interception back. That was a hell of a play by Trayvon Mullen. When you're playing and you're 0-12 and you're entering this final quarter of the season, if you're Sam Darnold, you want to play your best football right now. I know everybody else on the outside is saying these games don't matter for the Jets. Don't tell Sam Darnold that. That guy's the ultimate competitor. And I think we saw that, Greens, on his touchdown run against the Raiders.
Yes, we did. When the former high school linebacker of Sam Darnold, really came out to play there, lowering his shoulder, and then Jeff Heath actually exited the game after that, did not return. So Adam Gase said that he's a pretty big guy, Sam Darnold. He's like 6'3", 225. But with that being said, let's now hear from Eric Coleman for his 3 keys to the game.
Hi, I'm Eric Coleman here with Sirius XM NFL Radio with my keys to victory for the New York Jets as they play the Seattle Seahawks. Now, my first key to victory is to forget about last week. You have the 24-hour rule. Whether you win or lose, you have to erase what happened in the past. My second key is to stop the run of the Seattle Seahawks. Stopping that run is going to be a big catalyst in stopping everything else that they do offensively. Seattle loves to take the deep shots with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. If you stop the run, stay on top on defense, you'll have success. Now, offensively, continue the success from the run game. Ty Johnson had a great week last week. Those are my keys to victory for the New York Jets as they play the Seattle Seahawks.
Thank you very much, Eric Coleman. And we're taking a look now at the offensive line. EA, there were a couple of guys on the injury report that we saw, like Pat Elflein and Connor McGovern, who will be limited in practice. Those are some tough SOBs, so I think that they'll be in the lineup come Sunday. But here's what I'll say. Greg Van Roten, entering last Sunday, was the only offensive lineman to play 100% of the snaps on offense. And that includes all 5 linemen and every other position on offense. So with that being said, we saw Josh Andrews play right guard, but one guy that I'm curious who might be in the mix to get some playing time, we'll see, is Cameron Clark, because we were talking about young guys getting some more playing time. I think one guy that a lot of Jets fans would like to see would be number 72, Cameron Clark, who was drafted in the 4th round.
Yeah, we'll have to see if he's ready to go and see, the coaching staff right now has to evaluate how he's practicing and coming along. And if they think he should be out there on Sunday, then maybe he would be inserted into the lineup. But you're right about Andrews. Elflein is a guy I've been very impressed with on that left side, playing next to Mekhi Becton. Yes, that helps playing with a guy like Becton, but Elflein, known more as a center, shifted over to guard. He did some really good things. Both of those guys opening up some holes for Ty Johnson and Josh Adams. I'll tell you, Adams had some pep in his step too. Don't overlook him considering what he did. I know Ty Johnson had the first 100-yard game for a Jets running back since week 5 or game 5 of the 2018 season. So that's quite a bit. But you got to like what the Jets offensive line did. And you mentioned McGovern being on the injury report, like you mentioned, tough dude. I don't think he's going to be out of the lineup. So let's continue to monitor what's happening at a right guard.
For sure. And that guy right there, number 77, or as Brian Baldinger refers to him, Highway 77. And the Jets ran behind Highway 77 a lot of the time with Ty Johnson and Josh Adams last Sunday against the Raiders. But for a closer look at this Jets-Seahawks matchup in Week 14, let's hear from NFL Network's analytics expert, Cynthia Freeland.
Thanks, guys. The first number that stands out for me this week is actually a look back at last week. If you look to see the number of 10-plus rushes that the Jets had against the Raiders, it was 7. That's a season high, and you saw Ty Johnson have a breakout game, earning the first 100-yard rushing mark for the season for the Jets. He had 104 and earned 6 first downs on his own. Now, the next number is actually on the defense, 2.88. The Jets defense only allowed 2.88 yards per rush. If you look to see big Q's effect there, as in Quinnen Williams, who's had 12 run stops, which per PFF over the past 3 games is the most at the interior defender position. Now, to complement that, he's also been excellent in the passing game. He's had 20 total pressures in the past 3 games, and that's actually also most at the position over the past 3 weeks. That's going to be a key against the Seahawks. Why? Because the Seahawks in losses have allowed 4.5 sacks per game. That compared to in wins when they've only allowed 2.75 is one of the keys to turnovers. If you want to beat the Seahawks, you have to get them to give away the ball. In games that they've lost, they've had 3 giveaways per game. In games that they won, they only average 0.5 giveaways. That's a key. Now, that along with the fact that their defense gives up the most passing yards per game at 309.8. If the Jets can take advantage of that, they have a chance to upset the Seahawks. For more stats and context just like that, tune in this weekend to the Numbers Game with Dan Grassa and I. Back to you, Ethan and EA.
Cynthia. All right, Cynthia, thank you very much. Olivia Land is coming back to wrap up the show with the roundtable. Great numbers from Cynthia as always. Olivia, let's start with you on this roundtable question. So COVID has dealt a very interesting hand throughout the NFL. Every way possible, every way imaginable, even ways that you can't even imagine. But with no fans in the stands, Olivia, do you think that the Jets have caught a break because when they go to the 12th man in Seattle, the fans won't, or the players won't have to deal with the fans in the stands?
I think it's a double-edged question, honestly, because I think while the Jets may be at an advantage to where they don't have to play in front of a fan base, they're also not playing in front of a fan base at home, and neither are the Seahawks. And fan bases not only make it harder on an opponent, but they also make it better for the home team because they feed off of that energy. So long story short, I would say yes, it's always an advantage to not play in front of fans. But at the same time, you have to think the Jets haven't been able to do that either.
Very true. EA, what's your take on this?
The Jets got to bring their own energy. There's no doubt about that. The last time we saw them on the road was in LA against the Chargers, and they fell behind by so much, and then they tried to come back. The Jets got to play 60 minutes of football. This Seattle team, while they are very talented and have one of the best players in the National Football League and one of the best coaches in the league, they did not play well last week in their home loss to the Crosstown Giants, 17-12. That offense only scored 12 points. That offense is not operating like it did early this season. The Jets have to come out and play 60 minutes of complimentary football. We talk about it every week. They've had some opportunities to win some games of late. It would really be something. I do think, guys, they have caught somewhat of a break. But when you're on the road or you're at home, there's no fans, bring the energy yourself.
I agree with what both of you said. I think yes or no, like in a vacuum, I do think that the Jets do catch a break because if you get behind early, that 12th man is loud. And even if you get ahead early, they'll try to bring their team back in it as much as they can. And that's all we have here on Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. We'll be back next week, but we'll see you first on Sunday for Pregame Central, presented by Pepsi, as the Jets take on the Seattle Seahawks.